Star Wars is known for having some of the absolute best villains of all time. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 20 live-action Star Wars villains from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place to consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Star Wars villains. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours.
I have spoken.
Whenever I do a video like this, people always ask why I didn't include the characters from Clone Wars, Rebels, and the books. Simple answer, there's over 100 episodes of Clone Wars, there's dozens of books. It's just not practical to try and include all of that in a list like this. And sometimes people wonder why I didn't include this character, but I included that character. There's no good reason for it. I did the best I could with the characters that stuck out the most to me, and let's get started. In last place is Hux. He is easily the least interesting and most shrill of the Star Wars villains. I understand that the books flesh out his backstory, but the movies give us no backstory, no motivation, and they just present him as this barely competent, overly emotional character that's in a high position of power for no reason that's discernible to the audience. But even worse, the movies constantly play him at the butt end of jokes.
Good. Supremely.
The most interesting thing they ever did with the character was making him a traitor in Rise of Skywalker just to spite Kylo Ren, but even that doesn't really go anywhere as they kill him off immediately after revealing that. So if the movies aren't going to take him seriously, neither am I. Number 19, Newt Gunray and the Trade Federation. As the face of the Separatists, they were shockingly easy to manipulate, constantly nervous, feckless, and totally harmless. Potentially, there's an interesting idea with the Trade Federation as these characters that are trying to do what's best for kind of these outer elements of the Republic, but instead of it being this compelling story, they're just these nervous guys standing in a group on a bridge for 3 movies straight, and then Anakin slaughters them. They never do anything interesting. They never show any sort of depth to their characters. They're just puppets being manipulated by Palpatine. Next up, Captain Phasma, one of the most underutilized characters of the sequel trilogy. Her armor looks cool. She seems like she should be this intimidating presence that poses a serious threat to our heroes. But then she's totally inconsequential to the main plot line and is disposed of twice very easily.
And you blew it! You blew it.
A big part of the problem here is that they used her so prominently in the marketing and put her on a bunch of t-shirts and posters, and then in the movie, she just doesn't do anything that matters whatsoever, and so it's just a total waste. At number 17, Snoke, another horribly underutilized character from the sequel trilogy. In the case of Snoke, The Force Awakens sets up a series of kind of mildly intriguing mysteries surrounding him. Leia's dialogue hints at him having been around for a while. Of course, he's the leader of the First Order, so we're fascinated as to how he rose to prominence, took over this organization, and then halfway through The Last Jedi, he's killed off because Rian Johnson wanted to subvert our expectations.
I got a bad feeling about this.
And then Rise of Skywalker makes it clear that he's some sort of cloning experiment from Palpatine. So it doesn't really answer any questions in a satisfying manner. It feels a bit like J.J. Abrams wanted him to be a big deal, and then Rian Johnson was like, nah, let's just do something different. So J.J. had to cobble together some sort of explanation as to where he came from in Rise of Skywalker. Any way you put it, a total waste of all the setup and a dud. As a point of reference, the bottom 4 on this list I think are bad, wasted characters. As we move into this next batch of characters, they're not particularly important, but I find there's interesting things about them. They're good characters, but not super important villains. Then we have the client from The Mandalorian. Now, we don't spend a whole lot of time with the client. We don't learn much about him, but the events of the show, The Mandalorian, would not take place without him setting in motion the specific mission that leads to Grogu and Mando meeting one another. But what I love about this character is that he represents the former supporter of the Empire that sees the world after the rebellion as causing chaos.
Look outside. Is the world more peaceful? Since the revolution, I see nothing but death and chaos.
He believed in the Empire. He believed that it brought order to the universe, and he wants that back, and so he's doing his part to return to that. And I love that we get these small characters, not a super important villain, but at the same time, he gives us a little glimpse into the world of Star Wars that is very helpful. Coming in at number 15, General Pryde from Rise of Skywalker. This is another character that doesn't have a ton of screen time inside of this sequel trilogy, but he's a true believer in the First Order and in the Emperor as well as the Sith, who believes in the cause that the Emperor and the Sith can bring order to the universe. From the perspective of Pryde, he is the hero of his own story, trying to restore order to the universe, and that is what makes him interesting to me. Number 14, General Grievous. While he's technically a general in the films, he functions much more as a henchman of Palpatine. Now, I am well aware that his story is fleshed out better in the animated shows, but in the movie itself, Revenge of the Sith, he's just kind of thrown out there in front of us as this person to duel with our Jedi friends. And while it's kind of fun to see this guy that's not actually a Force user, that just has a bunch of arms fighting with lightsabers, that's fun. He makes for a good foil for Obi-Wan. They needed to give him in the movie more kind of a backstory to understand who he is, what he represents, and what his actual objective is in all of this. Then we have Jango Fett. This is a tricky one for me because on the one hand, his character is very important to the mythology. His involvement with Palpatine's schemes, of course, led to the clone army. And, he's part of kind of manipulating Obi-Wan and battling him. But his character also represents some of my absolute least favorite things about the prequel trilogy, which is George Lucas felt the need to tie everything together, and Boba Fett is one of the clones from the Clone Wars, but was raised as the son of Jango Fett.
What a story, Mark.
There's just no reason to do that. I don't think it's a particularly good idea. I don't think it's a particularly interesting idea. And so Jango, while he's useful, he's also a very frustrating character for what he represents. At number 12, Morgan Elspeth from The Mandalorian. She might seem like kind of an odd character to include on this list, but once again, I love what her character represents. She gives us a window into the world after the rebellion. And that's to say that if you're ruthless, talented, and powerful, you can rise up to prominence. And that's what this character has done. There's also a bunch of interesting kind of mysteries surrounding her. We get just a little bit of her backstory from Ahsoka Tano, but then there's also things like, why does she have a Beskar spear? Why is she talented enough with a Beskar spear to be able to stand toe-to-toe with Ahsoka Tano? And what are her ties exactly to Thrawn?
Where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Raises a bunch of questions that you want answers to and kind of tell of her backstory. She poses a worthy threat to our former Jedi. So for me, that's what you want from a villain. Next up, Dryden Voss from Solo. What struck me about him is that he doesn't really have some big elaborate scheme to take over the universe. He doesn't really have any specific ill will for the other characters in the movie Solo. He's just a gangster and another glimpse into the underworld of the world of Star Wars. That's what I kind of liked about him. At times he shows compassion for Solo and kind of their struggles, but he cares about himself the most, therefore it puts him at odds with them. When he needs to be a physical threat, he is. But it's that look into the underworld that I think I enjoy about this character. Kicking off our top 10 is Count Dooku. Another different perspective on the world of Star Wars, as he's the former Jedi turned into a Sith and battling against the Jedi. There's a bit of kind of a tragic story to that. He has a complex relationship with several of our Jedi heroes, and I find all those elements about him interesting. I feel like he's a real missed opportunity character. I still remember the first time I watched Attack of the Clones. He captures Obi-Wan and he starts talking about how he has discovered that there's this Sith plot that he's unraveled and he's actually working for the Jedi. And I thought that that was a more interesting plot, the lie that he tells Obi-Wan, than the direction that they actually go with the character. It feels like they had a bunch of potential ideas, all the setup for a fantastic arc with Dooku.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
And then it just never fully paid off. Number 9, Krennic from Rogue One. To me, Krennic is essentially Hux done right. He's emotional, he's insecure, but we know why. We understand what his skill set is, we understand what his motivation is, what he's trying to accomplish. In fact, his desperation for recognition makes him come off pathetic in a way that's almost makes him sympathetic and interesting. He gives us this insight into what drives the non-Sith members of the Empire, and that's what I think is very cool about this character. Coming in at number 8 is Darth Maul, and I am ranking him here based off just the movies, not everything that we learn about him in the Clone Wars and Rebels. What I love about this character is that he's a great example of how Star Wars can build these villains that look cool and are immediately mysterious. He raises so many questions of why is he able to stand toe to toe with 2 Jedis, and how was he able to kill Liam Neeson? But of course the fight continues on. Darth Maul gains the high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
But somehow Obi-Wan is still able to defeat him. This leads to him showing up again in Solo. He's a survivor. He's able to adjust and pivot based off situations. So one of these characters is just surrounded by mystery, and sometimes the mystery is more intriguing than answers. He's a great example of that. Then we have Jabba the Hutt, the gangster of Tatooine. In the original version of the trilogy, we didn't see him until Return of the Jedi, but still he had a strong presence before we ever met him because Han was afraid of him and he didn't get his money back to him in time, so he was in big trouble. So we start off Return of the Jedi, and one of our favorite heroes is a prisoner of Jabba. Certainly, Jabba is not a physical threat to our heroes, but he's a ruthless gangster that is vindictive, and he will leverage all of his influence to get revenge on anyone that wrongs him. As I've said many times before, I love it when we get a glimpse into the non-Empire, non-Jedi Sith world of Star Wars, and that's what Jabba was for the original trilogy. At number 6, Moff Gideon, the lead villain from The Mandalorian. Now, this is a character that they very slowly revealed the character, and we learned that Mando knows who he is and he's afraid of him and knows that he's a threat. And at the end of season 1, he has the Darksaber, which raises so many questions as to who is this former Imperial that has the Darksaber. And then all throughout season 2, there's little glimpses of him, little scenes letting us know more and more of what he's up to, of his cloning experience, trying to collect midichlorians. But Moff Gideon himself is characterized to be this character that knows more than he should know. But he can even stand toe-to-toe with Mando himself as a physical threat. So he has mystery surrounding him. He has a master plan. He has nice little quirks about him that make him interesting. All the things that make for a great villain. Bringing us into the top 5 is Boba Fett, a fan favorite before he even showed up in the movies because he had a little cartoon in the holiday special and they did a toy release for him before Empire even came out. Then he showed up in the movie and he's just one of these cool, mysterious villains. He has very few lines, and even what we learn about him is Darth Vader wants to make sure that he doesn't disintegrate anyone.
No disintegration.
Little lines like that hint at this whole backstory of like, what does Boba Fett normally do? Then he's the villain that comes up with the plan of how to actually catch Han Solo. Now, by having Boba Fett being taken out essentially by an oopsie in Return of the Jedi, oops! They didn't do the character justice at the time. Luckily, with the Aftermath books and now The Mandalorian, we're getting to see this character finally live up to the potential that we heard before. We got to see him in all his Boba Fett glory, just destroying dudes finally, and it was awesome. In 4th place is Kylo Ren, who does get a bit of a backstory, a character arc, and used as in a bit of an interesting way inside of that trilogy, as he doesn't seem to really believe in the First Order. He just, in true Sith fashion, is trying to rule the galaxy himself, and he thinks he's the right person to do it, and he wants Rey by his side when it happens. Along the way, he's constantly conflicted as to what he's doing. He has enough of a spark of the light inside of him that he knows that he shouldn't be doing these things. So he's a character that actually has multiple layers to him, clear motivations, as well as clear conflicts inside of him. And as a Skywalker who's a Force user for the dark side, he's also someone that is a formidable threat to our heroes. Real quick before I give you my final 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. My list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. And as I said before, there was nothing magical about these 20 characters. I could have swapped some of them out. I could have added some additional people. These were the 20 that stood out to me. If you want to include some others in there, by all means, go for it. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other Star Wars videos. I've ranked the movies, the final battles, the heroes, the Mandalorian episodes, a ton of different videos. You can check them out right up here in this playlist. In 3rd place is Tarkin, the quintessential ruthless Imperial. He's not afraid to take credit for other people's work. He's not afraid to torture a senator. He's not even afraid to blow up a planet.
You're far too trusting.
Dantooine is too remote to make an effective demonstration.
And none of this is because he's driven by the dark side. He is just a power-hungry human that is willing to do anything to rule by the fist. And a lot of times, because Vader is the more iconic villain, we forget Tarkin is the actual main villain in the original Star Wars film. He was the one behind all the stuff that happened in that film. And so Tarkin is one of the forgotten, fantastic villains of Star Wars. Our runner-up, Darth Vader. Now, I know, putting Darth Vader as the runner-up is a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I think it is the right placement. Right off the bat, Vader in the original trilogy is, of course, one of the most iconic film villains of all time. From the moment that he shows up in the opening sequence of Star Wars, he just immediately commands your attention. People follow his commands, and just seeing him, people are afraid and cower. He doesn't take crap from anyone.
We're giving you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
If someone fails him, there are dire consequences. And of course, he is a formidable threat for our heroes and one of the most dangerous and savages in the universe, especially based off that sequence that we saw in Rogue One. And based off of the backstory journey that we got in the original trilogy, he would be number one on this list, as there's something very powerful about the concept of a fallen hero that turns into the exact thing that he had been fighting. But I can't in good conscience put him at number one because I think they just botched his backstory with the prequels. I don't think it was set up well in Attack of the Clones, and the acting certainly there was not very good there. And then the execution of him going to warn Mace Windu to 13 minutes later slaughtering kids. I just don't think it was earned. I don't think it worked. It didn't help my understanding of Darth Vader. It hurt it, especially as they do that final sequence where he's actually in the suit and it goes full cartoon monster movie stuff where Vader clunkily steps out of his restraints and then screams. And so while in the original trilogy, he's absolutely number one, he's absolutely one of the best of all time, I think the prequels hurt his character. But coming in at number one is Kathleen Kennedy. Now, when she was hired, her resume as a producer was pretty phenomenal. However, the job that she's actually done with Star Wars over the last 10 years, questionable to say the least. Wait, sorry, we're supposed to be talking about characters inside of the live action movies. So, but coming in at number one is the Emperor Darth Sidious. This is the mastermind behind the full Skywalker saga. He's the one that put in place a plan to manipulate the Trade Federation, Dooku, Anakin.
To kill him. Kill him now.
To be able to put himself in a position of power. I mean, for that matter, he manipulated the Jedi. He manipulated the Senate and was able to rise to power, destroy the Jedi, and become the Emperor for 20 plus years. That is a true villain. But beyond his mastermind schemes, he also was a physical threat to our heroes, where he was able to battle Yoda one-on-one. He was able to use his lightning powers to take out Luke Skywalker. So this is a character that has physical power. He's a mastermind. He was victorious. That is everything it counts for a great villain. Even with being used awkwardly in Rise of Skywalker, he's still a fantastic character with all the elements of a great villain. So for me, he comes in at number one. If you enjoyed this video, remember I've got more like it right over there in that playlist. The movies, the Mandalorian characters, the Mandalorian episodes. If you want more like this, check it out right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.